Whenever you're ready, Ashley.
Waiting on you, sir. Go ahead. You can start.
Well, I'm going to kick it over to John. John, go.
Well, good morning, everybody. Wasn't sure how many folks we have registered. I think there's going to be some more coming in, but we have a pretty interesting speaker today. I think it'll be valuable for everybody to listen. But before we get there, I want to give a chance to say thank you to our sponsors and see if any of them are on board to say a few words. Christina, are you on with Villanova?
I am, John. Good morning, everyone. I am Chris Katsapis. I serve as the manager of college partnerships for Villanova's College of Professional Studies. We're excited to be a partner with GPVN and VBRN, here to help support you in your educational efforts with degree programs, professional education and certificate programs, in leadership, in business process management, Lean Six Sigma, any continuing education efforts that you're looking for. We're here to help support that. And I look forward to helping you in those efforts. So thank you so much, and pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody on from SIG Asia? All right, anybody on from Comcast? And how about Homefront Properties?
Mike's here.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. Mike Gabriel, owner of Homefront Properties Group, all veteran team in the local area, Philadelphia, Bucks County, Montgomery County, Chester County, and happy to be a sponsor. Yeah, United States Marine Corps, Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2003. If you know anybody looking to buy or sell in the area, anybody looking to buy or sell real estate in the area, we're here to help. Even if somebody isn't ready, if they need a little bit of counseling to move forward and they need to know what they need to do in a year from now, we're here to help. So don't hesitate to send us anybody that may need some help as well.
Well, thanks, Mike and Chris. Thank you for your sponsorship. We certainly couldn't do this without your guys' help to make sure that we can bring everybody together. So hopefully you get a lot of referrals from our group. That's the goal. So I'd like to move into our 30-second pitches. I don't think my normal pitch man, Matt, is here. So I'm going to tap Doug to give an example of what a 30-second pitch looks like and put some pressure on him. Doug Amlin, if you could give us a quick example of what a 30-second pitch looks like. And just as a reminder, it just includes your name and service, current role in business, referrals you need, referrals you've given, and then your name, and you'll be out. So Doug.
All right, Ashley, you ready? Who's keeping track? Hi, my name is Doug Amlin. I am the owner of Amlin Analytics, a veteran-owned company, obviously specializing in the analytics for the outdoorsman. USMC 87-91, 0311. And referrals that I'm looking for are people like you. I'm looking for small businesses. I'm not really ready for clients yet. I just would like to network. Again, Doug Amlin from Amlin Analytics.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate that. And I'm going to just try to run down my list and see if we can get everybody else in. We've already heard from Mike Gabriel. Brian Dunn.
Oh, sorry, just one quick thing before you go, Brian. Just everybody make sure you take notes on who is in the room. We do not send out we send out who's here today, but just please take notes of who you want to meet. That way you can connect with them afterwards. So yep, get a pen and paper and you're good to go. So, all right, there you go. Sorry, Brian.
Morning, Brian Dunn. So U.S. Army, former Chinook driver. Currently, I'm searching to buy a business. So if you know someone who knows a business or owns a business, or someone who's like a CPA attorney that knows people who are trying to sell their businesses, that's my perfect referral. And I have been referring people to private equity groups that need presidents to run the businesses if it's not the right part for me. So if they're looking to sell, tell me. If you're looking to run, I'll help you with that too. Thank you.
All right. Chanel
Dunn.
Santiago.
Good morning, Chanel Santiago, U.S. Army. I am the outreach specialist at the Norristown Vet Center. Referrals I need would be any veteran or service member who has served in combat or is a survivor of military sexual trauma that may be looking for counseling or don't know who to turn to. You can have them give us a call. Referrals I've given, a few to Mike Gabriel, and hopefully we can keep them coming. Again, Chanel Santiago, Norristown Vet Center, Department of Veterans Affairs.
All right, thanks, Chanel. Dennis Devery.
Good morning. Dennis Devery, U.S. Army, 1981 to 2012, Afghanistan, 2010. I'm the vice president for Thomas Edison State University, one of the public universities in New Jersey, and anyone who's trying to complete their degree. So we're specialized in adults who have life got in the way, and they now need to come back and finish their degree. So that's it.
All right, thanks, Dennis. George Kuznetsov.
Hey guys, George Kuznetsov, U.S. Army Infantry. I am with an organization called Business Maps. We are a business coaching company. See a lot of familiar faces and names on the screen. I know I've had a lot of conversations with you guys. Working with several of you actually, which is really cool. I also own a company called Corsair Homes, so I help people with real estate needs in Chester and Newcastle counties. I only work by referral though. But my ideal referral would be someone who has a business that is producing over $100,000. You have leverage, you want more, you have a student mentality, and I help people scale their businesses. So, George Kuznetsov.
Thanks, George. James Young.
Good morning, everybody. James Young, live via satellite, U.S. Air Force, retired. I run my practice with where I help folks protect what matters most, the things that they earn, the things they have, the things they owe, and the people they love. So that's what I do. Again, James Young, U.S. Air Force, retired. Happy to be here. Thanks.
All right, Johanny Manning.
Hi guys, Joanne Manning, U.S. Air Force. I am a realtor. I service Bucks County and Philadelphia County. Been doing this 15 years, and this was my transition off of active duty and during my reserve time. Currently working with the Homes for Heroes program that gives a reward back to buyers and sellers that are veterans, as well as police officers, medical, and teachers and EMTs. So it's a great time to be able to buy and sell a home, but it's great to do it with the heroes and the folks that I know and love. Joanne Manning with Berkshire Hathaway, Fox and Roach.
All right, thanks. John McGlade.
Good morning, I'm John McGlade. I'm a U.S. Navy submarine veteran. I now work as a personal financial advisor. I focus on holistic planning. People I most commonly work with have their eyes set on retirement, and they understand the importance that time can have on that plan. This is my first meeting, so I haven't really had an opportunity to give any referrals yet. But moving forward, I will need to hopefully get in contact with some people who can do wills, estate planning, and some tax filing. Again, my name is John McGlade. Thank you.
All right, John Rafferty.
Good morning. John Rafferty here. I hunted submarines in the U.S. Navy 05 to 09. I'm a litigator at a firm I'm one of the co-owners of, Gothrop Greenwood. We serve veterans in the greater Philadelphia area who are on the end of a lawsuit that they need help with. So good referral for me as someone who needs help with a legal case.
All right, thanks, John. Lee Toothaker. Lee? All right, we'll skip Lee. Paul Martell.
I'm sorry, this is Lee.
Oh, sorry, you're good.
Go ahead, Lee.
Sorry, I was trying to get it unmuted and didn't want to come off. Sorry about that. Lee Toothaker, U.S. Army, also previously the OAF coordinator for the VA. Worked for 12 years in the VA in the regional office, and now for the last 12 years I've been working in the VA Medical Center. I'm the community employment coordinator for Chester County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, and what we're doing here is just trying to help veterans get back to work and build partnerships in the community. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Paul Martell.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Former Corporal, United States Marine Corps. A good referral for me would be not only, and I'm part of Home Front Properties. So a good referral for me would be not only a buyer or seller, but possibly someone looking to rent. Right now, a lot of homes and properties are going for sale. So there's less out there in terms of renters, and they're going quickly. So if you know anyone that's looking for a rental, I can definitely help them out, or especially if they're looking to buy or sell also. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. Rick Schilling.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm driving. Rick Schilling, United States Marine Corps, 93 and 97. I was an artillery officer. My company is Integrated Productivity Systems. Started 8 years ago, declared war on inefficiency in manufacturing and distribution around label printing. And I referred business to Caleb Hops, who introduced me to this network. And I was reintroduced again recently by Sean Ellsworth. So I'm first time attendee, and a great referral for me would just be any business in manufacturing or distribution that needs help improving processes. And I'm happy to refer people I meet when I learn about what people do today. So nice to meet everyone.
All right, thanks, Rick. Robert McLaughlin.
Hey everybody, how are you? My name is Robert McLaughlin, U.S. Air Force veteran. Basically, I did food, hotel, fitness, mortuary management. I was services for the Air Force. My current role is I am a business owner, so I own HD Dog Training. So it's Philadelphia's best dog training company. We do in-home dog training. Obviously, the referrals I would need from that are people with dogs or any rescues or any daycares or anything. My goal in the future is to build an actual physical college for dog training that helps veterans as well with housing and everything. So again, for referrals, I've given, basically I've worked with Damon Swigart in the past from T-Mobile. And again, my name is Robert McLaughlin.
Thanks, Robert. Susan Weiser.
Wiser, yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
So my name's Sue Weiser. I'm the program manager for the VHA Voc Rehab program at the Coatesville VA Medical Center. We serve veterans who have barriers to employment, who maybe have been out of the workforce for a long time, have transportation, legal, mental health, substance use disorder, a variety of barriers to employment. We try to offer a soup to nuts vocational program for veterans and meet them where they're at and help them get to where they're going. Referrals we're looking for is anybody who could use support with their education goals, their employment goals, getting back into the workforce, and businesses who want to give veterans a fighting chance. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Susan. Did I miss anybody? I know Andrew Colquitt. It's Colquitt is on. He said he couldn't join and tell us who he is and what he does, but at least he's listening in. So we appreciate that, Andrew. Anybody else that I missed?
Sean just jumped on.
Sean Ellsworth.
Hello. Sorry to join late. I guess I got to jump into a 30-second pitch. Is that right, John?
You do. It's hopefully on your screen. And
I got it right there. Oh, my name is Sean Ellsworth. 9 years active Army, 87 to 96. I'm currently a talent acquisition leader in the HR department at Vanguard. I need all kinds of referrals. We're hiring all kinds of people at Vanguard, but from a business perspective, I'm good. I'm here to learn more today and glad to see everyone. And again, my name is Sean Ellsworth. Happy to be here. Let me know if I can ever help you with anything.
All right, thanks, Sean. All right, I guess I got through everybody. Last chance, any alibis? All right, so I'm John DiNapoli. I am retired U.S. Army, and I run a leadership training and development. I also retired from the pharmaceutical industry. But the reason that you have all joined is probably not for me or for giving your pitch today, but for hearing our speaker. Dr. Marisa Porges is, I mean, just a crazy impressive resume, and I could read the entire bio, but you guys have it. But most importantly, she's a a recent author of What Girls Need and How to Raise Bold, Courageous, and Resilient Women. She is now the 8th head of the Baldwin School. It's a 130-year-old girls' school outside of Philadelphia. Probably more importantly to most of us, she began her career as on active duty in the Navy as a flight officer, where she flew the EA-6B Prowler and deployed on the USS Lincoln in support of Operation United Assistance. So she has done incredible things, including worked in the White House under the Obama administration. She's a senior policy advisor. She has advised on cybersecurity and technology. She knows about counterterrorism. Her accolades and experience I could go on and on about, but I think it's more important that we listen to her. So Dr. Porges, if you would share a little bit of your knowledge with us, that would be terrific.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. It is great to be here. Thank you, Alex, for teeing this up and everyone for joining this morning. It is fantastic to be in amongst a group like this today. Unusual for me. You'll have heard John mention that I now run a school. So for all those wondering what your pivot looks like after active duty, I mean, it's been a few years now after active duty and reserves, and lo and behold, I'm running a girls' school for students in pre-kindergarten through grade 12, so ages 4 to 18 years old. So in some way, a world apart from, life at the tip of the spear, flying prowlers off of carriers, or handling, advising on counterterrorism work in Afghanistan and things like that. I will mention that when I first got the job, and still today, people often say that the counterinsurgency work I worked on in Afghanistan may be somewhat similar to handling teenage girls. I will not confirm nor deny that, because I do love my students here at Baldwin. But when I was listening to everyone today, and as John and I had talked, and Alex and I had talked beforehand in terms of what this group typically focuses on, and what these morning meetings are typically like, and they had mentioned that in large part, after I hear everyone's introductions and get a sense of where everyone's at and what's on your minds, just based on how you present yourself, what referrals you mentioned, sort of the work you're doing now, it would, give me a sense of exactly how to gear, a few minutes of conversation, and then we'll open it up to Q&A and discussion about, veteran success, right? What does that look like? How do we get there? I have to say that, when you read the bio, or where you hear John's, very gracious introduction, it's all the highlights, because that's what bios are, that's what LinkedIn is, and that's what, opening introductions are. But of course, it doesn't mention all the moments when there were doors slammed in my face, or people who didn't quite get how, flying for the military and, managing a department of folks on the carrier deployment, or, being an advisor to ISAF in Afghanistan, how does that translate to almost any job I've had ever since? And so, I feel like it's important to acknowledge that, because I think we all, as veterans, particularly who've had, with active duty experience, and then trying to translate that experience to other places and other people, there is a little bit of a dissonance, a disconnect sometimes. And so this sort of group is incredibly important and helpful to remind each other that, okay, that happens, but it is not a, it is not a minefield we have to navigate. It's just something to acknowledge. And then there's tricks and things we can do to solve for it. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about, the tricks the strategies I think can be helpful as we all are sort of navigating, pivots along the way. And you'll have heard John mention that I had, not one, not two, not three, but maybe 4 career pivots, right? I had my active duty life. I pivoted from that to being a civil servant in the federal government. And I spent, a good 6 years in the Pentagon and the Treasury Department, later at the White House as a civil servant, handling national security issues, but in a world apart from military itself. I pivoted again to an academic life, and I spent time doing research and going back to grad school, and, a number of years in that world. And then I pivoted most recently to being the CEO of a nonprofit, and sort of that whole life, and an author, right? And so this is the book that John mentioned recently came out. And each way along those pivots, there was the 2 things I mentioned to start, right? The moments of just the equivalent of the door slamming in your face. I suppose now during a pandemic, it's the control Q of closing the Zoom. That is that equivalent. But that moment when there was the disconnect between how does my prior experience, how does all that work I did in the military and active duty in Afghanistan, overseas, or in any of those places translate to being an author, being the CEO of a girls' school, things like that. And then there was the strategies that perpetually, as I look back, helped most along the way. So I think I'll sort of talk about those two things for a little bit, but then leave lots of time for discussion and questions of other things on your mind as we talk about those two ideas. And so, I'll start with the moment when there is that disconnect, and and I'll just share what it felt like to me. And so for those who have experienced it, there's at least the knowledge that yep, this is not atypical, this is normal. And there is sometimes this hard to translate moment when, your work doesn't translate to another and you're sort of trying to find that connection. And the first, maybe not the first, but one that fully stands out for me goes way back to the time when I was working to transition off of active duty in the Navy, and I was moving into the reserves, but then also looking for my first true civilian job that was a career, not my, maybe not my first job, but doing that, sort of first career pivot. And for those who've been in Washington, D.C. at all, I was sort of focused geographically on Washington, wanted to sort of pursue national security, but in a totally new way, looking at federal government, for those who think consulting, think tanks, trying to that end of things. And the thing that sticks out for me is one of my earliest meeting with a woman who, for the women on the call, oftentimes there's a sense that, when you're meeting with someone who, when there's a female connection, you're gonna at least there's some connection, even if they don't have military experience, that there's some, moment of relatability for different challenges you've had to undergo in your career. And, at this point, I had my first grad degree. I'd served on active duty. I, flight school, SEER school, deployment, back again. And I can still picture leaving the meeting where the head of a department of a think tank, sort of like a consulting group in DC that was handling, a range of foreign policy, national security issues about the places that I'd been and served. And the entire time in the meeting, her message was to me, yeah, I don't get it. I don't see how what you've done applies. And it was crazy to me to think that I not only had sort of done what I thought I needed to do academically and served and all this stuff. And I can remember standing on the street corner around DuPont Circle, for those who've been in DC, just a mile north of the White House as the crow flies. And candidly with this group crying, right? And just being so distraught because the message was you can't make this jump. That doesn't make any sense. What it took after that, candidly, was persistence. It took knocking on more doors, talking with more people, and getting my foot in the door, and then having someone help me translate. Having someone help me translate my military experience, what I'd done, into the language that was easily understood and well received by, the person on the other end. And so what that looked like was a lot of, outreach, a lot of informational interviews, a lot of the things you're doing today, which is try to get the referral, have the coffee conversation where it starts with a casual conversation. And then when describing what I did, actually ask the question, what of what I just said made sense and what needs to be retranslated? How do I translate what I just described into something that makes sense in the language of, in this instance, it was think tanks, consulting, other departments. For those on the call, it will be small business operators, entrepreneurs, people who the skills are aligned. The skills that we all learn are the skills that you need to be a successful business person, entrepreneur, CEO, author, all these things. They're the skills that you need to run a girls' school because it's about persistence, perseverance, adaptability, problem solving, collaborative and group teamwork. All the things that are prized in any industry right now is what we all were trained and how we were trained to think and operate and function, whatever service we were in, whatever line of training we went through. But I do think that it helps to find folks in the industries we're talking to And then be straight and ask the, like, how to translate what I just told you into the language that makes sense. And so this is where, I mean, and eventually for me, that is how I got my foot in the door for that first job at the Pentagon as a civilian. And then later sort of was able to make the pivots that John described into, 4 different industries, federal civil servants, academia, nonprofit management, life as an author, things like that right now. But it did take sort of that translation along the way. And that's where I'll sort of talk to my most recent moment of that translation, which was in the process of not just writing the book, but as it turns out, getting a book published and picked up by a press and an agent is the hardest part of all. And it took everything I just described that sort of I honed strategically, honed as my strategy over many years as I pivoted and did lots of different jobs along the way. And it speaks to the referrals we just heard talked about. It speaks to the translation work I just described, perseverance and persistence, and just candidly, finding the people, right? And this is the people aspect who will help you out. And so for me, what did that look like? The process of writing a book, I now realize it's the writing of the book is one thing, the actual sitting down and writing, but everything it does to get a book published is a whole world unto itself. Requires as much translation for those who haven't done it before as, perhaps it was required for moving from military, active duty career to something else. I'll say that my first go didn't grow that well, but I was fortunate. So there's a little luck in there, but there was also people along the way who helped, right? There was the person who referred me to a number of agents. A book agent is key to get a book published, as it turns out. But I had to test the water with a bunch of them and figure out after each one, like what translated, what didn't, because it was about selling yourself as much as a book or any writing you could do. Once that was done, then it's about, again, the referral to and getting it published, the press. And while the book industry itself may not be something that anyone on the call is thinking about, the strategy is itself is applicable to anything we're talking about, right? Because then for the press and the publication, they were great. Anyone who walks on the door can write the book. That is the level of entry. The same way all of you on the call have the skills to do any of the jobs that you've been describing or any of the businesses you're trying to set up. That is sort of almost taken for granted. And I take that for granted with all of you. It was the translation work that was needed to sell myself, pitch myself, and do it in a way that resonated with them. And then having the people in the room or on the sidelines to help move things along, right? And so that, again, took practice, right? For, my book, I pitched to a number of presses, and a lot of them were like, impressive book, well-written, sounds cool, but like, we're trying to get you. What is the you? Like, how does that, because they're buying you, right? In the same way, anyone running a business, we're investing in you, whether it's real estate or dog training or a lawyer or, HR, people, particularly now when everything is, there's so many options. It's really about investing in you and understanding how your military experience and all the things you've done since translate into a package. And so again, I think it just is something to really think about, how you work on translating what you've done and who you are to whatever audience you're selling yourself to, and then testing it, running it, realizing it won't work well, perfectly the first time, and it'll take a couple of times to go, and then asking people for feedback along the way, and using those people to help you translate better and to make the connections and network you need. So I think that's sort of like the big picture moment. I do think that, or big picture, idea I want to put forward to the group, this idea that, if the keys are, persistence and people, the strategy that aligns those two is this idea of thinking about how you're translating not just your skills, but the you that comes with the skills into a package that speaks to the people on the other end. Because every client, every job, every opportunity requires a person to finally make the decision, even if there's an algorithm screening things at first. It's the people connection that makes most sense. or sort of that makes the key difference. And that's where, again, I think when Ashley mentioned following up after these meetings, right? It's the follow-up that'll matter because you make the personal connection with somebody. It's the fact that on LinkedIn, you know, these days, it's not just about the posting on LinkedIn, it's about making the personal connection through LinkedIn to sort of have a conversation with somebody so that they understand you and can help translate you to whatever your audience is, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to throw those two ideas out to start. I did want to leave this open for conversation. You know, Alex, I don't know if that's typically the way you guys run things. John, I will leave it up to you to sort of help moderate, but having done a lot of book talks and other sort of events these days via Zoom, I do think that conversation around how these ideas resonate and sort of what questions then it prompts from you all are a really helpful way to, again, engage each other and help move, you know, help us along to our own personal version of veteran success. You know, I think, so I appreciate the chance to be here. And, you know, I'm glad, I'm hoping that, you know, what I said prompts some questions so we can take it to the next level.
So we've had some other speakers that have opened it for questions. It's really hit or miss, to tell you the truth.
No worries.
You know, it just depends on how curious and engaged people are this morning and what else is pulling them away. So open it up for any questions.
Well, I have some comments if I could interact a little bit with
Yeah,
Marisa.
that'd be great.
So thanks for talking to us this morning. I have to say I'm really enjoying it. I've got a page full of notes here. And there are two things I really wanted to just highlight and say that resonated with me this morning. When I absolutely believe that parenting is counterinsurgency. I always joke, you know, I'm always joking, like, if you're a parent, you are absolutely fighting an insurgency because they live there and you're just in their space and they will outlast you. And they've got internal communications. You have no idea what's going on and you're trying to win the hearts and minds. And it's bad as toddlers. But now that I've got teenagers, yeah, so spot on. That's the second book I think we could all probably get together and read or get together and write is Parenting Insurgency. So perfect. And you know, the next thing that I really, I wanted to thank you for reminding me of this and why it's so important is, you know, when I was in grad school in 2013, I read a book, I just Googled it here to remind me of the author's name, but Herminia Ibarra, it's the Working Identity book. And if you've ever had a chance to read that, it talks about how you transition from one place to the next. And it was a huge point in my life where I was trying to transition. And the idea is it's really the go act as if. And as you begin to develop this identity, you act as if. It helps pull your old self forward successfully versus like, if you think about something and you're always trying to just, what do I want to do? What do I want to think about? You'll never do it. But if you start to act in it, you begin to inhabit that change, and that successful transition was a very important part of the making your pivot stick, so to speak. So, you know, and I was just writing down like the getting people to get it. And I'm moving in various circles trying to get people to get it as well. And the way you described that, the translation of your past, plus the folks who can help act as introductory, you know, river guides, so to speak. Really great message. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for that feedback, Brian. And also for passing on books and things that we can all look towards like that. I wrote Working Identity down and I look forward to looking into it. So now we started talking tactics too, right? So if the strategy is understanding that you have to translate yourself, right? And one part of that strategy is adopting the identity you want to inhabit so that you sort of move that forward and sort of it becomes the real you for your next chapter, right? I think of life in chapters. You know, tactics that work off the bat for those who are sort of like, well, what does that mean operationally, right? Candidly, like think of your wardrobe. I mean, that sounds like a random one. And we, you know, I remember the first time I had to pivot out and you're like, wait a minute, I have to like figure out what I'm supposed to look like when I walk in the door for people to take me seriously. And my first pivot was, you know, as a young woman in the Pentagon, sitting around the table with very senior men, you know, who weren't inclined to take me seriously, were more inclined to say, you know, oh, like, is she getting the coffee? Seriously. And I know, and for the women on the call, you'll get it. For the men, just remember that the next time you have a young woman at your table, right? And I had to, at first, adopt the personality I wanted to be by what I wore. over time, I went back to the more me, which is like colors and, you know, sort of a little louder, but like it didn't start that way. At first I had to be like, all right, this is what I need to look like at the table to be well received. But then to your point, Brian, those river guides, right? It was about having river guides who I could ask like what worked and what didn't. And I actually can remember one, colleague who in my time in the Pentagon, that we bonded, you know, we became like, you know, work buddies, in part because he flew prowlers as well, right? He had been a couple years ahead, but like we had the whole like prowler experience and deployment experience that was similar. And we used to go on walks around the E-ring, right? It's like, you know, the afternoon walk, you grab a Diet Coke, and if you have a break, you go take a walk. And he was working on a similar issue in a different part of the Pentagon. And I could candidly be like, yeah, what worked, what didn't? You know, because he was more senior than I was, but I felt comfortable with him because we had similar backgrounds. And I was able to say, hey, you know, did it work? And so this is where, for those who are doing pitches with new businesses or trying to get referrals or trying to make that entry in, I did the same thing. And again, it's what I translated with my book agent. We would leave each pitch meeting with a publisher. And he wasn't used to this because I don't think most authors are so like open to the feedback or like want to tackle the problem like head on in the same way. But I'm like, no, let's solve this. I know what the goal is, right? That is my own training. The training we've received is we want to get from A to B. I don't care how we get there, but we're getting to B, right? So like and we would leave each meeting and I'd be like, all right, like I want to debrief. Like what worked, what didn't, like, did I talk too much? Did I talk too fast? Was I, you know, like not serious enough, too serious? Like, did the language work? And so, Brian, I think it's fantastic when you think about this, adopting the identity and then using, I love the word river guides along the way, to give you the feedback for the, you know, it's critical. We used to, it's something also that I think we all got in the military, feedback, and it's not normal in the civilian world to get feedback regularly and candidly and expected and wanted. And so it's something we have to seek out actively, I think, in the wider world, to navigate, you know, the realities of transitions in life and setting up new businesses and all things like that. So thank you, Brian. That was fantastic. And I look forward to the second book, Parenting is Insurgency. So I'll work on that. Yeah.
I have anecdotes if you need some, some folks. Absolutely.
Well, I have a toddler now at home. So, you know, I get it. Yes. We're just starting that. I get it.
Hey, Marisa, there's a bunch of questions in the chat about how you found an agent, how you managed to select an agent, about publishing. Apparently, we have a lot of budding authors in the audience today. So just a little bit of insight into that.
Sure, I'll talk to that. And then Dennis, I said, I saw you put your hair down. Is that what you was on your mind, or talk?
No.
Okay.
I have a different question. So.
Okay, we'll come to that next and then we'll go Dennis and then Robert. Okay. You know, for me, I'll say that, like, you know, writing a book had been on my life list. For those who have sort of like a list in the back of the mind of like crazy things you want to get done eventually, and it's like running a marathon, writing a book, I mean, like whatever, right? And eventually you do it. You might not do it well, but you check the box, and I will never run a marathon again, but okay, fine. The book thing for me was something that I kept coming back to at many times. I came back to it in grad school, right? And in grad school, I sort of like spent a little time digging into it. I talked to an agent, and I'll speak to sort of like how that works out, but I like had that conversation. I started writing. It didn't really go anywhere. Writing a book is incredibly time intensive, like probably one of the hardest things I've done in the past 5 years. And yes, I'm running a school during a pandemic. So like, you know, we'll put those two in parallel. But it was something I kept coming back to. So then probably the third or fourth time that I mentally came back to it, the thing that made the biggest difference was the people, right? So I had people in my close network. So these are people who sort of like knew me intimately at my, you know, and were able to position me with a couple agents. So it was an author who was a published author, a well-known author who had contacts in the industry, who then made opening pitches. That's sort of like the first step, right? It's like the same thing as getting your referral, getting your foot in the door at a job. And then it's really about where you take it, right? And I'll mention that my husband is an academic, and he's published as well in the academic press side. And it's all hard. The publishing industry, particularly these days, unless you're Kim Kardashian, and look, no Kim Kardashian comments aside, but like, unless you're Kim Kardashian and that's sort of your social media following, like it's hard to publish a book because it's all about the media that ends up, selling books. That's, it's a money, that's the industry. And so it really became about selling myself more than the book. Once I got introduced to agents, they needed to be convinced that I was worth investing in. I will say, for those who are thinking of like trade presses, AKA mine was published by Penguin Random House, Viking Press is the sub press, or like one of the big presses. Sad to say, but your social media following is the number one thing that they are actually looking for these days, because again, that's how they sell books right now. So these are sort of like the crazy details I found out along the way. I don't, but it was really about selling me. I happen to have, a unique career path with some crazy stories of, I interviewed terrorists in Yemen for my PhD. I, served on, with ISAF in Afghanistan. I flew jets for the military. Like, I don't know. I don't tell my mom half these things, but like it ends up selling a book when you have these crazy stories. And I now run a girls' school. So I was able to write a parenting book, or a book about parenting, women, leadership, things like that. But I do think it was the selling myself first to an agent and then to a publishing house. I will say this is about finding people who can help make entree. I will not say I'm pro at it, right? I can't teach a 202 book class, because I did it once and I had both a little bit of luck and a lot of luck on my side. And so this is where I'm happy to take specific questions, but I also want to be candid that it is my first book. It is, been out for 8 months. Pick up your copy on Amazon or wherever you buy books these days, because it's hard to sell books in a pandemic. But it's, I just would say this is where persistence and people, the same theme we talked about earlier, right? This was my fourth go at taking on a book. 2 of those goes involved talking with agents, right? Like each time I sort of got it a little bit further. And then things all came together, time of life, the people in place, the stories I needed to tell, and the opportunity sort of came together. But it, was both persistence and people. So hopefully that addressed the questions. I'm happy if there's people on mute and ask specific questions to answer them to the degree I can about the industry or whatnot. But I'm going to ask Dennis, who is patiently waiting, to chime in first, and then we can go back to that other subject if it's still sticking with people.
Yeah. So thank you. So I actually think you should start a series of counterinsurgency books, because I transitioned to higher education, and I can assure you that in the academic world, I'm an administrator at a public university, and I'm constantly using my counterinsurgency techniques to keep things going in the right direction in higher education. So. Yeah, I was actually in charge of Afghan Army and Police Development in Afghanistan for the IJC in 2010. So yeah, a lot of unique things that I use there that I still translate back to my higher education world, because it's about organizations and people and how to move things. And we actually were on a panel together at the Haverford School, I think probably 4 years ago. Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
So,
I forgot. Good to see you again, out of context.
So when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is great. And we'd love to have you come talk to the university and, tell them about your book as well. So we'll connect on that. But my question was, and I'm a vice president, and I was very fortunate, again, luck and preparation kind of make things happen. So I became a vice president, looking now after 9 years in this world, moving to a presidency. So what was it that sold you to become the head of school? Because that is a very unique, like a president of a university, it's a very unique leap. So what was it you think that was kind of the thing that sold you? And the university, or the Ramapo College in New Jersey, just got a brigadier general from the Army who's going to be the president. She starts, I think, in July. So yeah, another unique, but I was interested about that. And then the other thing for the whole group, I think, is, so you talked about mentors that helped you along the way. How did you find those mentors, right? So it's one thing to help them help you, but then what was your network to find those people?
Awesome. Those are fantastic questions. Just to, before I dig in, I worked on counter corruption in Afghanistan in 2011. So just missed you because it was about, at the police and the, in particular.
I'm sure we could share a lot of stories.
And totally. I will also mention that for those who have this idea of coin in your head and sort of what that means, it is totally applicable to parenting, academia, probably almost any industry, because, and I try to explain this to my team, like my senior staff, it's about understanding the nodes of influence. Right. And then making the connections between those nodes and figuring out, again, where you want to move everyone, how to get them there. And then using nodal analysis to understand whether it's whatever your customer base is, right? Customers could be faculty, teachers, business people, whatever. So thank you for that analogy. It was great. I hear your two questions. I'm going to ask to clarify, when you said what sold me, was it about what convinced me to take the job, or what convinced them to hire me?
What convinced them to hire you?
Got it. Just to make sure.
Yeah.
So I think, it was a very unique shift for me. So, as a just brief aside, I had no experience at, pre-K to 12 school. I mean, besides going to school before taking over the job as head. I didn't teach at a school. I didn't do fundraising at a school. I worked, briefly at higher ed and academia as a, lecturer and, researcher and things like that. But I think, I have happened to have the unique position of being an alum of the school I now run. Which isn't to say that it's why they hired me, because every institution has hundreds of former clients that wouldn't be suitable to run the place, but it meant there was a personal connection, right? And this is where, going back to all the things we talked about, I leaned into and leveraged that personal connection when I pitched myself, right? I can remember my first interview, my second interview, like multiple rounds of interviews, and at the end of my first or second one, I forget which, when I was sitting around the table with, it's a search committee, is the group of the board members are sort of screening candidates, and they had all their questions, right? They got their questions asked, and it was this normal, like, what do you think the goals would be? How would you do it? Have, explain how you'd run a budget, like all this stuff. Fine. I prepared for that and I could handle that. I think that made the difference initially, and sort of then over time, to help them both get to know me, but make the personal connection with me, was I took time back at the end, right? When they weren't going to give it to me, but I said, before we go, I just want to, make one statement. And I prepared. I actually can remember the ride up from DC to Philadelphia on the train, like kind of preparing mentally for how at the end I'd pitch myself. And, for me, because it was the school I'd gone to, I actually had brought with me like something from the school, like a class ring or some like token. And I pulled it out and I said, before we go, one thing I want to say, like, if you hire me, you get somebody. And then I gave a little 30-second kind of the pitch you just did that spoke to me, not the job, not the management, not the fundraising, hiring and firing, but I know you as an institution, as a community, and that's what you're getting. So I think that actually, and there's a lot of other little and big things, Dennis, but I think when we think about our audience, to figure out how you're making the personal connection, whether it's, the military connection or, the dog connection. I'm looking at Robert and I'm thinking, as someone who, my fur baby is as important to me as my baby, right? But to make the connection with the audience, to say, if you hire me, you get somebody who has takes their dog to, I don't know, whatever. I can't give you the story, but you tell a story. And I think this is where storytellers are the best salesmen. And if you tell the story about yourself, that's what you're trying to do. You're selling yourself. So Dennis, this is where, if you're going for those jobs, or anyone, particularly if it's a leap or a transition where it may be hard again to translate, think of the story that speaks to you personally, but makes the connection to whoever they think they are. For me, it was about a girls' school, community, home, right? And I said, that's what you get if you get me. You get someone who knows this school, feeling of home, yada, yada, yada. And I spoke to the mission statement. But I prepared it in advance and I demanded that time at the end. They weren't going to give it to me. And I said, before we go, I have one more thing. And then the second question, you said how to find mentors. This is something that I talk to my girls about all the time. Again, for the women on the call, women do not, statistically speaking, have as many mentors as men. It is something that we do not do, but research shows, as effectively. A little bit is just time, because I think some of it is the conscious seeking out of mentors, but also then making them true mentors, right? A true mentor isn't just someone on your LinkedIn list who you can email and may respond or not, right? A true mentor is someone you can, over time, develop a relationship with so that they become what I call a sponsor. Someone who just doesn't give you advice, but someone who sponsors you, who brings you to the table, puts you forward into the room, says, I got a project and I have someone in mind without you knowing about the they think of you before you think of them. So I think the how to find is the first step. This is where, scouring your network, looking around this room, LinkedIn is a good opportunity. You can find mentors these days because of social media and the internet by if you see an op-ed in the paper or some interesting article or some interesting video, email the person. Literally these days, it's much different than it was, 20 years ago. People respond to that. But then you have to have a conversation after that. You have to figure out how you develop, you're not going to be best friends per se. And it's that, you're not looking for a bridesmaid or a maid. What's the other one? I don't know, whatever. My point is, it's not that. It's about having some ongoing connection. And so the things I tell my students and the things I tell my mentees, put something in your calendar. Every 6 months or at least once a year, you reach out to them. You send them an article. Hey, I thought of you. You might find this interesting. Just to continue the conversation. You make yourself available to them because realize that the mentors we want best are busy people. It'll be hard for them to reach out. And then over time, you continue to develop a relationship. And then you make asks, small asks. Research shows, it's called the Benjamin Franklin effect, that making small asks of people actually has, makes them invest in you over time. Benjamin Franklin used to do this. He used to ask for books from his political enemies, borrow books, because then if they do things for you, suddenly you've developed this personal connection. Anyway, so that's sort of how to find them. But I think that how to find them is just the first step. It's really how to get them to invest in you by investing in them. That makes the biggest difference, Dennis.
Great, thanks. And I'll be in touch.
Perfect. Robert.
Yes, hi.
Johanna, I see you next. We'll get to you.
So really quick, to help you sell books, this is a great book. So if you go to Russell Brunson, he basically has a series of books he sells for $7, but it's networking marketing secrets. It just tells you how to funnel your website and get into the psychology of the website itself.
Thank you.
So for me, basically, I've done a lot of transitioning since I got out.
Mm-hmm.
I was food, hotel, fitness, mortuary management in the Air Force, obviously. So services. When I joined, I was Special Forces, ended up with my top secret. Basically, when I graduated basic with honor grad, they told me that I didn't have a spot anymore. For whatever reason, there was no more TAC P positions in the Air Force. So I ended up in EOD because it was all hands-on. Then I got there, washed out again, ended up in food, hotel, fitness, mortuary, and they stationed me in New Jersey. When I got out of the military, I was really trying to figure out what to do. So I kind of got into security, physical security protection in the city. I ended up managing a lot of the nightclubs and ridiculous clubs. I had tons of shootouts and stuff. Eventually I kind of got tired of it, realized that guns and everything were triggering my PTSD. So me going to work every night in Philadelphia was even worse. So my mental health battle has been a huge part of this entire thing. Since I got out, I've ran Wawa's management programs. I've gone to Wendy's. I've literally tried every management position there is out there. So eventually I just kind of gave up and I started running my own dog training company. I started from scratch, had the Veterans Affairs put me through vocational rehabilitation, went through a dog training program, went through another dog training program, went through UPenn's Working Dog Center. And I just kind of continue to keep taking these courses, but I also have 4 other businesses that I'm working on. So business solutions, networking, really just kind of to help people create avenues of revenue and think tanks. So I have ADHD. I'm just leveraging all of my things into business now. So that's my biggest transition in learning was anytime I'm uncomfortable, I literally fall face flat first into it because on the other end of this is going to be growth. And I literally preach this with my clients 24/7. So if you need any animal analogies or how to raise kids right, I got you, because I do this with my dog clients all the time, especially with the gaming systems things. I'm you get the Xbox. Jimmy doesn't get the Xbox. So it's your Xbox and he can play it when he wants or when he's good. Sorry. But yeah, so really, I guess my whole thing now is I'm trying to develop a book, if you will, or really, I guess a training book to go along with the online courses I'm developing. Because right now I'm Philadelphia's best dog trainer. I've been since 2018. 3 years into the business, and things kind of took a shift when we were trying to leave Philly. Philly gave us the Best of Philly award, and I was okay, I guess we're in Philadelphia. So since then, really.
Hey, Robert, I just want you to, if you can, move along because we're getting close to the hour. So if you have a question, I want to get to the next question, then I'm going to cut this off. So
is it going to be the same process for writing a book as it is creating a training manual to go along with the program? would you say, or do you know?
Yeah, I mean, so this is where I think if we split up the two, the writing of the book and then the publishing, getting it out there, the book into two separate pieces. I think the writing of the book will be similar, right? So like this book, I broke it into chapters and I just chipped away, right? And like, I sat in the mornings and I went to the coffee shop on the weekends, and when I let my partner handle the other stuff, and he was good about doing it, and it was chipping away. So the same way you have training manual, like modules, I'm assuming, or something like that, I broke it into pieces, right? Everything can be broken into pieces, and then I just chipped away over time, and then you get to the end. I think I couldn't speak to the publication part of it. I think that's where it may be different. It sounds like there might be opportunities for you to do an online version, which, sort of is a little bit of a different audio, and is a great way to go these days, depending on the audience and things like that. But I think the writing process would be very similar and doable. Right. Okay. And again, it's about breaking everything into parts, and then getting out there for feedback and sort of, for pickup, right? To make sure your audience is listening.
Okay. Gotcha.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Of course. Johanna?
Hi, it's Joanne. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Joanne.
That's okay. The H is silent. It's okay. I've been sent to the boys' side of the camp when I was a kid. So just wanted to say thank you so much, right? So you're right. We have very different things that we look at when we're looking at business. As we reinvent ourselves, I did put in the chat, what do you mean I wasn't told what I was supposed to wear today, right? So that was I did active duty for 10 years. And as we know, our commander always said what uniform of the day was. And so it was very interesting to go into business when I pivoted. So I love that point that you said that, right? So I have pivoted several times. I was active duty for almost 10 years, played in the dirt with my kids for about 2 or 3 years, went back to school, and then decided it wasn't, they wanted me to do in residency, to go to dental school. I had already had 3 kids, and I said, no way, I'm not leaving them again. I've already left them for a year. I'm not going to do that again. So that pivoting point is huge, and having to figure out our attire, our image, and all of those pieces are so big that we don't really see regularly. And I don't feel like they're addressed enough, right? Definitely things that we have to look at. And maybe that's something that we as veterans should be talking more about it, right? I'm still more comfortable in combat boots than heels, but that's just the way life is, I guess. I wanted to ask specifically about when we are refining our bios, right? So I'm refining my bio. I feel like a bio is a living, breathing document. We need to be looking at it as we continue to develop in our whatever particular industry we're in, or this is 15 years for me in real estate. And I was recently going through my bio and I went, gosh, that was like so from the beginning. I'm not sure if that's really still the same. But some of those pivot points, how do we get those in there so that they flow? Because to a lot of people, these pivot points are crazy. Right? Like we just went from one to another, like you, like, okay, what did you do? And to people, they're like, what the heck were you thinking, Marisa? Like that didn't even lead from one to the other. And I feel that's how they look at us and say, what are you doing? This is, they're not even logical. So how do we try and string them together a little better so that, we look at these and go, man, that's perfectly normal, right? But not the rest of the world does. How do you recommend that, Marisa?
So it's a great question, right? And it's really about the nuance of developing this new working identity and speaking to the audience, whatever the audience is, because the audience will change. And it's something that I again, tell my students and mentees and people along the way, you can make the story sound good after the fact. Don't worry about it. Right? Go for what you want to do, go for what will be fun, impactful, like the mission, right? The mission, the people, and the fun. If those 3 things are there, go for it. And then I always tell the people, my mentees, I'm like, we'll work out afterwards, like how you make the resume flow or the bio flow or make it make sense, right? My career makes no sense if you look at it from like flew jets, like civil servant, like higher ed, runs a school, like whatever. But if you think of it through the lens, right now I talk about it through leadership. right? Before this, it was about a threat of national security, a threat of understanding, global connections, right? It was about, understanding the military at the front of the tip of the spear, about working in the government on strategy and policy for national security, right? You can make it flow after the fact. So this is where I think it's incredibly important to, one, realize that everything in your story doesn't have to be there every time, right? My bio for this event reads totally different than the bio for any event I've been doing lately for my book, because most audiences don't care that I served at ISAF, that like I was in Operation Unified Assistance, that like, all they think is cool is like, oh, she flew jets for the Navy, period, right? Like, because it's a hook, but it's not really part of the story they're there to hear about. So I've had to give up the fact that like, I'm super proud of my service. Like, amongst the most proud things I've done is the service I did in Afghanistan and in, certain specific operations in the military. It's not part of my bio anymore. So one is to be conscious of the fact that every part of your story will not be relevant at every moment for the bio. And that's okay, right? It'll come back later depending on your audience or the moment, but fine. The second thing, that doesn't mean it's about the time that has lapsed, right? So it's not the fact that it was 15 years ago that makes a difference. It's just the fact that like when I'm pitching my book to an audience of parents who are worried about their teenage girls, like think it's cool that I flew, but like that's not the piece that is resonating with them to bring them there. So the other thing then is to then figure out, well, when you figure out the pieces that work for the audience for the moment, you put things aside, you bring them back and forth, have different bios or resumes for different moments. It's about realizing that like, it's the short, sweet pitch, the short, sweet pitch, picking the top 3 or 4 things, because human beings don't have that long, our time attention span has gotten shorter over the years. And now like, I'm not an Instagram person, but apparently like, a picture says 1,000 words and 120 characters is all you need. But think of it, Johanna, like what are the top 3 or 4 things that will sell yourself right now? It can include the stuff from previously. And then run it past people in the industry to say, does this make sense to you? Am I describing, can be your military experience, but it's not necessarily about what you did, it's about what you learned or sort of the story that goes with it. I really think this is where storytelling becomes like key in how we think about it. It's less about the facts on the page, it's about how the story fits together. So I think at any point in time, we can thread the story together. It doesn't matter what you've done. It's all there. It's about putting the picture together so it feels right to the audience. Does that give you enough to go on? I mean, does that sort of get to the heart of what you're asking?
It does. It does.
Okay.
And I think, and you're right. So depending on what you're doing, I was a dental tech. That's what I did in the military, right? But I joke, if I could encourage you and negotiate with you to get you in the dental chair and get the work done that you needed, and you left as a happy person, hell, I could sell anything. That's why I sell houses, right? So that's our kind of joke, to put those together. But you're right.
That's a great, that line, figuring out the succinct way of building that into your bio, right? It might take a little creativity, but like, that's great. Right. Okay. Because again, for me, no one cares really in my current world that I like flew jets for the Navy, but they care that I am like really good at managing large systems and operations, and particularly right now, managing teams in crisis, right? The past year and a half has proven why you want someone who has that experience around a pandemic, right? So that's the story. And so it's, it's about that element of it. In moments, it's about being one of the only, again, for some in the room, you'll get this, being one of the only women, on the aircraft carrier at the time I was flying, just because of the time and that I was there, because that speaks to sort of my audience. And again, that's particular for the audience right now. But I think that is a great creative line that you can feed into it. Just it may take a little bit of work, noodling how that happens.
Fantastic.
All right, I am going to jump in and cut this off. I know we could probably go around the room, Marisa, and everybody has a question for you. And I would encourage them to do your Ben Franklin and reach out. If you have a question for Dr. Porges, I'm sure she is happy to engage and answer those questions. But I want to make sure that everybody gets some information before they start checking out. We've lost a few people already. I know, Alex, you have an announcement you want to make about a Google event. So first, let me say, Marisa, thank you very much for your time and your thoughtful presentation, as well as opening it up to any questions that people were willing to throw at you. So we really appreciate it. I think this is really valuable.
It was a pleasure to be here, guys and gals and everyone. So thank you for having me. And it really, I appreciate everyone's engaging conversation in the Q&A.
Hey, Melissa, we didn't get a chance to get your information at the bottom when you said, please try to reach out. I was trying to copy it and it was gone.
Okay,
So
sure. I'll
if-
put it in. I just stuck my email in here. If you, I just stuck my, oh, excuse me. I'll stick my email in again so people can reach out. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll put it in the follow-up email too.
Thank you.
For
Or
everybody.
LinkedIn or, you know, social. I'm not that great on other besides LinkedIn social. I'll just put that out there that the school runs it for me. So.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, as Brigadier DiNapoli mentioned, thank you for your time today. Really informative information. You know, when you and I first connected again, we met through the Haverford School event as well through World Affairs Council. There's a couple of different things just to wrap it up, you know, just to kind of share with people what the event is as well. But in true essence, about getting what you want through veteran success is really about all the points that you mentioned today about, you know, in there was a lot of resilience. And I think that, you know, we didn't even explore that topic as well, but just resilience means how many no's to a yes is really about, you know, the endurance of the game. And then high touch rather than high tech, which is basically relationship building. And I think by default, everybody just wants to chat online today. So I think that's a great reminder for us. And you hit the nail on the head for one of my favorite people, because I have a poster of him. You can't see it here because I'm redoing my office, but I have Ben Franklin as one of my true legends, because Ben Franklin is the one that truly was the best networker. So Ben Franklin, if you look at the history of Ben Franklin, everybody, he is the true essence of he got everything that he needed through networking. So the history is there for you. Somebody should write a book on him on that. So thank you so much for that. And we appreciate the information. People will definitely be reaching out, and anything we can do for you. If you need any veteran speakers for your school, you know, we have a lot of people. Brigadier General DiNapoli speaks on leadership and others that are here. So we have an event coming up called Grow with Google. Google is one of our partners with our Veteran Shark Tank. Ashley just put the registration link. If you own your own veteran-owned business, on April 30th on Friday, Google is bringing a trainer on how to grow your veteran business online. This is powerful stuff. I mean, to go directly from the horse's mouth from Google is pretty unique. So we're getting Google on. Please log in, share it with your friends, share it with your network. If you own, it doesn't matter how small your business or large your business is, your presence online for reviews, how to post pictures and all that stuff, it is on April 30th. And then we'll see the next speaker that we have coming up in May. We have the CEO of Johnson & Johnson who will be joining us to speak for next month. You'll see the link coming up soon. So thanks again to everybody. Thank you to Ashley, Olivia, Brigadier General DiNapoli, and thank you, Dr. Porges, for joining us today. Everybody have a great day, and go make some relationships out there. Build your equity. Thanks.
All right, we will see everybody at the next event. Ashley or Alex, what's the date on that?
May 19th.
All right, so everybody needs to go register for May 19th.
It's not up yet, but we'll send you an email when it is. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks everybody for participating. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.